This year, Peace Corps marks 60 years of peace and friendship around the world and 25 years in North Macedonia. On that occasion, we asked former staff, host families, former volunteers of Peace Corps North Macedonia about their experience and traces the mission left in their lives. Let's hear what they have to say. What was your connection to Peace Corps North Macedonia and for how long?
A friendly good morning to you wherever you are in the world. My name is Allison Meredith, and I'm happy to be talking to you today about my experience as a Peace Corps volunteer in North Macedonia. I was part of the 19th generation community development sector and was stationed in a small village by the name of Kratovo. It's closer to Serbia and Bulgaria, and I was stationed there from the fall of 2014 until the winter of 2016.
Zdravo na site! Јас се викам Бил Бриджфорд и јас слушав како волонтер во секторот за образование волонтерски мировен корпус во Северна Македонија од септември 2016 до јуни 2019. Hello everyone. It's been a while since I've spoken Macedonian. I think I said, my name is Bill Bridgeford, and I served as an education sector Peace Corps volunteer in North Macedonia from September 2016 until June 2019. But my best Macedonian sentence always was, Izvini, moj makedonski jazyk ne mnogo dobar. Da li sporavate anglийski jazyk? Or, excuse me, my Macedonian isn't very good. Do you speak English? Got me out of a lot of trouble, folks.
Hey, my name's Audrey. I served in Peace Corps North Macedonia from the fall of 2014 through December of 2016, and I want to tell you a story about learning a Macedonian song with my host mom.
My name is Claire Alo, and I served as a Peace Corps TEFL volunteer in North Macedonia from August 2016 to December 2018. I lived in the village of Žitoše, which is surrounded by mountains and tobacco fields in Pelagonia. As a Peace Corps volunteer, I had the privilege of teaching English at our village high school, alongside 3 other English teachers. I was also a TEFL PST co-trainer for the MAC 23 cohort.
So my name is David Nash Mendez. I was a MAC 18, so I served from 2013 to 2015. I was a community development volunteer. My pre-service training was in Romanovce, where I learned Macedonian and Albanian. My service community was Tetovo, which is predominantly Albanian, but I lived and mostly worked with Macedonians.
Hi, this is Justin Otten, Peace Corps MAC 7 in North Macedonia. Arrived in November 2002 with 20 others, or 19 others. We comprised a group of 20. We were the first group back after the 2001 conflict, so arrived with no other volunteers in the country, which was unique on its own. The country back in 2002 was so different than it is now, and I just returned this summer to see it again, and every time I return I see how much it's changed. I was a TEFL volunteer, so teaching English in Delchevo, small town in the east of Macedonia, a beautiful place with a lot of wonderful people. Really, I thought I was lucky to be in the TEFL sector because I was able to teach kids, and not only teach them, but learn from them. It also, of course, meant that everyone in town knew who I was, and that was a good way to be immersed and to get to know people.
Mierdita, my name is Laura Robinson, and I was a TEFL volunteer in North Macedonia from the years of 2016 to 2018.
Hi, my name's Lisa Andonovska, and I was part of the MAC 7 group of Peace Corps volunteers who arrived in 2002 to reopen the program after 2 evacuations. So when we came, there were no longer volunteers in country, and the staff was working hard to rebuild the program and redevelop all its sites and contacts. And I did my pre-service training in Demirkapia, and then worked at an environmental NGO called Kladinets in Pekševo, which is located in the eastern region of the country. And I closed my service in 2004, and then I was actually lucky enough to come back and support the program again from 2010 to 2014 from Peace Corps headquarters in Washington, first working in the Europe, Mediterranean, and Asia region, and then later in the Office of Volunteer Recruitment and Selection.
Hi, my name's Matt Murray. I was MAC 4, served 99 to 2001 in a town called Kratovo.
What is your most memorable moment, story from working with Peace Corps North Macedonia?
There are genuinely too many memorable moments for me to mention during my service. The ones that stand out the most, however, are moments that were shared between me and my host family. For example, both of my host sisters were married during my time in the Corps. The youngest went first, which is not traditional, but it happens. At her wedding, everybody had a plan that nobody let me in on. And that was to replicate her cake, which she was so crazy about, super bridezilla about. They created a fake version of this cake and did a whole hoopla in the middle of the floor, and then dropped it. And I all but lunged to try to save the cake in the process, in my gown and everything, and everybody was just laughing at me. How much time and effort I took to try to save this cake when it wasn't even real. It was styrofoam. Well, fake frosting on me. We still laugh about it today.
Just to back it up a little bit, early getting to my site, I was super curious about the culture, the music, the dancing of Macedonia. I joined the adult Oro group and choir, and it was just a great way to get to know people and also invest in these interests of mine. So my host mom, who was actually a really creative person, who had friends working at the kindergarten, asked me if I'd help them put on this show for kids and families for Veligdan, or Easter. So they sent me a song and I practiced, got some tips from my host mom and choir director on the best way to deliver the music. It was actually really fun to get coached by them and kind of see them take on this role of, get me into shape for the song. And on the day of the show, I remember I got dressed in my traditional costume from my Oro group and came up on stage and enjoyed every second of singing the song. And even more so, just, I'll never forget dancing with my host mom on stage and smiling towards each other and even kind of singing parts together. It was a special moment that really taught me the importance of music and dance and culture. Later, as a funny follow-up, my host cousin, the cousin of my mom, my host mom, actually asked if I'd sing that song at her wedding. And similarly, I remember getting up and kind of singing this note for the wedding band and going into the song and just feeling this special warmth, sharing a moment with my host family and a gift to my host cousin.
My community of service was in Oak Ridge, and the secondary school where I worked was St. Kirill y Methodius, also called Ekonomsko, because we specialized in the business and medical education tracks. I'm still with Peace Corps, working as a regional recruiter based in New Orleans, Louisiana. The best part of my job is discovering passionate and talented individuals to pass the torch of service to. As a recruiter, I'm often asked, what was your best day and your worst day? I have a tough time with that question. Sure, there were a lot of tough days, but there was never a day that I thought I'd made a bad decision by serving. And there were so many good days, best days. I suppose the day after I had a bicycle accident were the toughest because it was winter and I was slowed down for about 6 weeks. People had to help me do the simplest things, and navigating stairs got to be real tired real fast. And I suppose the best day was seeing the first graduating class of the Student Resource Center project holding up their certificates. But maybe it was the day we officially opened the community garden. And maybe it was the day I had my last pizza with my youth club kids. Any one of those memories and all the others always brings a smile to my heart.
I was fortunate to live with a generous and open-minded couple in Jitoše. From day one, they treated me like a daughter and demonstrated remarkable patience as I adapted to life in their home. Together, we formed a family unit with inside jokes, favorite foods, and a mutual admiration for Tina Turner. My host dad made me laugh every day, and my host mom's work ethic still impresses me. Over the 2 years we lived together, I truly felt like part of the family. So much so that we occasionally talked about going on a vacation to Albania. However, due to a variety of factors, we were never able to make that happen. So a few months before my close of service, my host parents invited me to join them to visit Struga and Ohrid for a day. They were going to a hospital in Struga, and then we were going to explore the cities. I gladly agreed, since I'd never been to either place. The morning of our journey, my host dad told me to sit up front, and we started the drive. Winter was in the air as we cut through mountains, with wood smoke floating up from countless chimneys along the way. At one point, the fog was so thick that my host dad jokingly said it was snowing. He then pretended to be lost and asked me for directions, which my host mother did not find entertaining from the back seat. We arrived at the hospital, and were only supposed to be there for around 2 hours, but ended up staying there for 8. There were long lines and we had to wait. Yet despite this change in plans, I had the opportunity to spend the day asking my host parents questions and hearing their stories. Their recollections and impressions of the world were remarkable. I was also shocked by how many people, according to my host mom, were at the hospital due to a lack of respect for Promaya. We eventually left the hospital with around 2 hours of daylight remaining. We were tired, but they insisted on driving another hour to visit a monastery on Lake Ohrid. Despite being Muslim, my host parents wanted to show me this Orthodox holy place that I hadn't yet experienced. After seeing the peacocks and amazing monastery grounds, my host dad pointed west and said Albania is just a few kilometers over there. He smiled, and I realized that while we weren't on a beach in Albania, we were on the shore of Lake Ohrid with Albania in sight. This day of unexpected events and powerful stories was our family vacation. A family vacation that I'm grateful for and will never forget.
Well, my parents met in Peace Corps when my dad was a volunteer in Paraguay, so I guess you could say that I wouldn't be alive if it weren't for Peace Corps. But as far as for my own service, I bring so much of Macedonia with me wherever I go. I have a full set of earthenware pots and frequently have friends over for tapče with beans fresh from Tetovo, some homemade rakia, some trebapi, and some shopska salata on the side. I still check in with my site mates every few months, and I still talk to my host families all the time, getting to go back for weddings or births of new babies. I still chat in Macedonian whenever I get the chance, even if I'm talking in Macedonian and whoever I'm talking to is talking back in Serbian or Croatian, Bulgarian. And I still occasionally have cravings to listen to Macedonian folk music, or sometimes even catch myself humming Denesla Macedonia. It happens. But professionally, Peace Corps was a great step for me in working internationally. And though I moved back to the US to finish grad school, after a few years back home, I wound up moving back to Europe again. I now work in Geneva, Switzerland, at a global health organization that actually funds some of the health projects that Peace Corps volunteers around the world work on, which is really cool. It's really gratifying, but it also means that I'm that much closer to going back to Macedonia for my family's next slava.
So many memories, it's hard to pin down what was the best experience and the best thing that I took away from my Peace Corps service. I'd say from the get-go, from November to February when we were trainees with a hub in Negotino, and I was living with a family in Pepelište, a family who my host parents became the kumovi, or the godparents to my own kids. So a relationship I maintain to this day. But yeah, I met my future spouse who was working for the local Peace Corps administration, Irina, who's from Kavadarci. So met her back during that training. Met also a lot of wonderful people that remain close friends to this day, other Max 7 volunteers. Then went off to my site and, just really had so many great experiences with my Macedonian counterparts and my other Peace Corps colleagues. We put on camps in the summer, up above Delchevo one summer and Baravo another summer, with my colleague Matt in Kriva Polanka, so often involved in the continuing education throughout the summer breaks. The breaks were, again, a perk of being an English teacher. So my story with the country runs long, though, because I served until 2004. came back to Indiana, where I'm from, and did a master's degree in Russian and East European Studies, during which I had the opportunity to intern in the U.S. Embassy in Skopje. Realized I wasn't cut out for the State Department, but had a great summer nonetheless. Then came back to the U.S. for a while, and eventually married my spouse Irena. So moved back to Macedonia in 2008, and we lived in Skopje for a year and a half. During that time, I was an English teacher again, teaching here and there. I also recruited for American councils in the larger southern Western Balkan region. I then did a PhD in the UK, which was in anthropology, so that had a fieldwork component to it. So we actually were in the UK for a while, but then came back to Kavadarci so I could do my fieldwork. And during that time, my daughter Vera was born in Kavadarci. So the story just goes on, and I developed these strong affinal ties, learned a lot more even during my fieldwork about the country and the people and the language than I ever did during my service, but no doubt wouldn't have been there without my service. So again, my service was just such an integral part of what came next in life. It was a pivotal moment in my life as, a young man out of my undergraduate education, looking for an adventure, but also to try to do my part to do some good and change the world. So that's Peace Corps in a nutshell for me. A wonderful experience that I maintain engaged with to this day at Indiana University, where I work. I chair the on-campus Peace Corps recruiting committee. I just met with a recent volunteer, Elena Cruz, who was evacuated from Macedonia just a year or so ago, unfortunately due to the pandemic. So she and I just had coffee the other day. And we have some Macedonian friends coming over for dinner this evening. So on it goes and continues. A huge part of my life with my wife Irena, my children Vera and Alexander, and all of our friends and family here and in Macedonia. Thanks for listening.
When I think about my most memorable experience, and when I talk about my most memorable experience, I can do that for hours, and I have done that with my friends and family. But one of my most memorable moments really come from my host family experience in the village of Boyan, Macedonia. And what stands out to me the most about this is the true hospitality and care my host family showed me, and especially my host mom. One example of this is I started running when I got to my village, and this made my host family very nervous, but they were encouraging of my efforts to run. And I would run at a stadium, and my homestay house could see the stadium. And I remember running in circles around the stadium, and I look down the hill and I see my host mom's little face in the top floor of the house in the attic, just looking down at me. And that's always a really fun story to tell.
There's so many memorable moments from my service, and I could talk for hours about the projects I did with my counterparts, like all of us, or the epic and hilarious cross-cultural misunderstandings I had with people, probably also like all of us. But one memorable moment that stands out for me was this one day when I was getting ready to take a bus from my pretty rural site to a larger town, and I was standing on the side of the road waiting for this bus that wasn't coming, and this elderly gentleman happened by and looked like he was kind of getting a kick out of the fact that I was standing there looking frustrated. And I asked him, "Sir, do you know if a bus is coming today or is supposed to come?" And he kind of made this hand gesture and waved his hand and said, "Neka doide, may it come." And this non-answer kind of made me laugh, but also was infuriating to me that, this was the way that things operated, and I couldn't get it, and I couldn't understand the way that people planned. And I ended up returning to my apartment, not going anywhere that day, and was probably pretty irritated about it, if I remember well. And, in the following months and years, I came to learn some lessons from that experience that have kind of reoccurred over time about patience, expectations, and maybe most importantly, understanding the locus of control. and that being successful in an overseas environment doesn't mean insisting that things be predictable or like function the way they do in the States, but just adapting to your local environment, understanding it, and learning how to navigate it in a way, that works locally. So that's something I've had to learn and relearn.
And got too many memories, and most of them too long to share, and definitely inappropriate to share here. But one that always sticks with me, and really I think does a good job capturing my entire service in the Peace Corps, was a Halloween project we did with my high school students. And you got to remember, this is a couple decades ago, so Halloween was not even on the radar of Macedonia. Nobody knew what it was. It wasn't a holiday. It was also at the dawn of the internet, so it's not like people could just look it up. And it was, now that I look back on it, probably a pretty ambitious project, but we didn't care, right? So the idea was we were going to connect with one of my friends and fellow volunteers, Mike DeCenso, all the way across the country on the other side in a little town called Dolno Kosovarsti with his elementary kids. So we were going to take my high school kids in Kratovo and connect them with Mike and his elementary kids in Dolno Kosovarsti. And we decided to do it around Halloween. So what we were going to do is my kids were going to host a Halloween party for them. But it was fascinating because there were so many challenges along the way. First of all, they had to learn what Halloween was. So we spent, several weeks of class time researching, learning, talking about Halloween, and then designing what we would do for them. Not just, vocabulary learning, but, actually bobbing for apples and, trick-or-treating and, cultural things. And after that, we had to figure out how we were going to get over there. So they had to raise money, put on dances, sell T-shirts, do all this stuff to raise funds to get the bus tickets. And, it was a multi-hour bus trip across the country. And then we crashed at Mike's place. You can imagine, a dozen teenagers, mixed genders crashing in a hunting lodge and on the other side of the country. Probably wouldn't be allowed today, but we did it. And I don't think anybody got injured. And it was wonderful because, my kids were there. They were more or less the host, even though Mike was hosting us, but they put on a little haunted house. They guided the young kids through the town, the villages, both Dolno and Gorno Kosovarsti. And Mike had prepped his community and his kids, giving them a little background, kind of knowing what to expect. And then we put on this Halloween performance that was pretty amazing. And I, think back on often today. How has Peace Corps affected my life? It's a big question. It's definitely made me more flexible, but it's also, honestly, it's affected all of my life. I look back and pretty much everything I've done since and who I am today in so many ways can be traced back to the Peace Corps. And I think that's reflected in the work I do, in my personal relationships and the continued relationships I have with both Peace Corps Macedonia and the people of Macedonia. And as far as how Peace Corps is changing my views, it's changed my views. I mean, so much has changed, but I think one of it is just the perception or concept of time. I lived in Kratovo, where everybody joked about it being, like everybody lives like 500 years ago, they used to say. And those aspects of it that were like 500 years ago, were exactly what I found most valuable then and now. So I find that very interesting. Not to mention, Macedonia is called Kratovo, Kraja na Sveta. They call it the end of the world, but it really was the beginning and still is the beginning of my world. So, it's definitely changed my view of how we look at time. Not to mention, too, that just, Peace Corps was supposed to be a 2-year service. And, here it is, like I said, a couple decades later. And I feel like I'm still proudly serving not only my country, but the country and people of Macedonia. So really appreciate it. And here's to 25 more years.
How has Peace Corps affected your life?
When I joined the Corps, I was all in for the experience. I never anticipated how profoundly my life would change during my service time, nor did I foresee the digital nomadic future that I ultimately moved toward. Peace Corps has changed my global views exponentially. I consider myself a global citizen these days, having now visited and documented via my adventure travel blog, Bag Lady Meredith San Diego, over 55 countries post my Peace Corps service. After 3 years in Eastern Europe, I've become more aware of my Blackness than ever in my life and the importance of teaching moments and being visible as a role model for other Black Americans to go abroad. I've become obsessed with our interconnectedness as organisms on this planet, the lasting consequences that our overindulgence as humans has on the planet, and the value of my advocacy therein. Peace Corps has also taught me to embrace change, what it is to be flexible, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, when to speak and when to listen, and just how far the impact our presence as foreigners in these countries has on those within it. I'm forever grateful to Peace Corps North Macedonia, and I'm a proud RPCV for life.
There's no question that my service has had a profound impact on my life. I served in my late 50s, and what my colleagues and I accomplished is certainly some of the best work I've ever done, both in terms of impact and meaning. And I say this having done some good work before. I mean, at this stage in my life, that almost 3-year period represents a smaller fraction of time than for someone who serves in their, 20s or 30s. I suppose if I envy them one thing, it's that they'll be able to savor the memories of their service longer than I will. But the people who love me best tell me that I'm the same guy, just a little nicer, gentler, kinder, and patient. Except when it comes to dealing with Americans who revel in ignorance and hate. And I suppose that's true because I have learned what it truly means to be an ally.
With that in mind, Peace Corps has affected my life in many ways. Most notably, the concept of ima vreme has stuck with me. Now, 5 years later, I still remind myself there's time. Time to share with family, time to appreciate nature, and time to ask questions. The people I met and lived with in North Macedonia were incredibly hardworking, but they also valued time for life's pleasures. As a result, Peace Corps has changed my views as a high school educator. Before Peace Corps, I often rushed through the required content, but now I try to focus on the vital skills of exploring other perspectives, challenging preconceived notions of the world, and asking thoughtful questions. After all, those are just some of the important lessons that I learned from Peace Corps North Macedonia, and they remain with me today.
I think living in Macedonia really forced me to be less black and white in terms of how I perceive the world and the people in it. There's so much pain and hurt and hate in the Balkans, but there's also so much love and compassion and amazing hospitality, and you have to learn to live with the inherent tension that people are capable of both so much love and so much hate. People that you love are capable of both. And you can learn that anywhere, of course, but it's just a lot more obvious and raw when you live in a town where neighbors were fighting neighbors less than 20 years ago.
The Peace Corps has affected my life in truly great and powerful ways. And really, just like one of my favorite foods, Ivar, it has turned its way into all aspects of my life. For one thing, it gave me the courage to change my career and propelled me to pursue and complete a master's degree. And personally, I attribute a lot of my tenacity, flexibility, and patience to my Peace Corps experience. I am a different, more well-rounded individual, and I hope a more empathetic person after serving in North Macedonia.
Peace Corps forced me to challenge aspects of my own culture and identity that I'd kind of always taken as fact and look at them through a different perceptual lens, to consider different perspectives. And probably the biggest change was the ability to sit with ambiguity. And 17 years on, I better understand, how this expansion of my comfort zone was one of the many gifts I received from the program. And I'm humbled, sometimes wondering if I've given enough in return. I hope that I have, and I'm happy to see the program going strong after 25 years. Here's the 25 more, and I congratulate you. Thanks so much.
It's a big question. It's definitely made me more flexible, but it's also, honestly, it's affected all of my life. You know, I look back and pretty much everything I've done since and who I am today in so many ways can be traced back to the Peace Corps. And I think that's reflected in the work I do, in my personal relationships and the continued relationships I have with both Peace Corps Macedonia and the people of Macedonia.
How has Peace Corps changed your views?
And then the Peace Corps has changed the lens through which I view the world, along with my specific role in it. It changed what I truly value and care about and how I think about a lot of different things, such as culture, religion, language, and even education. The Peace Corps also changed how I interacted with people and how I interact with people and how I show others I care about them. The people of North Macedonia, particularly those in my site village, are some of the most caring and inspirational people I've ever met. With my homestay family and villagers as an example, the Peace Corps has changed how I treat and care for others. And I am just really so very thankful for my time in the Peace Corps. And I know that I will be returning to the country of North Macedonia to visit my friends and family, I hope sooner than later. Faleminderit, and thank you.
I think living in Macedonia really forced me to be less black and white in terms of how I perceive the world and the people in it. There's so much pain and hurt and hate in the Balkans, but there's also so much love and compassion and amazing hospitality. And you have to learn to live with the inherent tension that people are capable of both so much love and so much hate. People that you love are capable of both. And you can learn that anywhere, of course, but it's just a lot more obvious and raw when you live in a town where neighbors were fighting neighbors less than 20 years ago.
And as far as how Peace Corps is changing my views, it's changed my views. I mean, so much has changed, but I think one of it is just the perception or concept of time. I lived in Kratovo, where everybody joked about it being, like everybody lives like 500 years ago, they used to say. And those aspects of it that were like 500 years ago, were exactly what I found most valuable then and now. So I find that very interesting. Not to mention, Macedonians call Kratovo, Kraja na sveta. They call it the end of the world, but it really was the beginning and still is the beginning of my world. So, it's definitely changed my view of how we look at time. Not to mention, too, that just, Peace Corps was supposed to be a 2-year service. And, here it is, like I said, a couple decades later. And I feel like I'm still proudly serving not only my country, but the country and people of Macedonia. So really appreciate it. And here's to 25 more years.
Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more podcasts.